At long last, it's officially official. Boomer Sooner is a member of the SEC and helping us break it all down. Our good friend Tyler McComas, he's the host of The Rush on the Ref from 2 to 6 daily, talks all things Oklahoma Sooners on a daily basis, and one of the best in the business at doing so. Tyler, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you taking the time.
I'm an SEC media member, and it just feels like, well, seriously, man, it feels like that's been a different status level covering college football. I've been this Big 12 guy that has to get up at 6 a.m. every single Saturday because the team that I cover is always playing at 11 a.m. I'm an SEC member, baby. Like, let's go. I'm jacked up for it. This is awesome.
So obviously, Tyler, you're fired up. The fan base, as I would imagine, is fired up. I want to go back to that fateful day back, and I believe it was June of 2021 when we first got this news that Oklahoma will be joining the league. And it's so funny. You know this, Tyler, as well as I do. In college athletics, 3 years isn't that long of a time. But in college athletics, it's forever because we have coaching changes, players leave, the landscapes change. I mean, just look at how college football itself has changed in that time frame, and coaches have changed, right? So talk about to me when you first heard the news on that day versus where we are right now and it's officially happening. Are you more excited, less excited? Is it the same? How has that changed for you and the Oklahoma fan base?
I'll never forget that day. I've been in radio for 12 years now and have been on air for some crazy things that have happened, definitely OU related. Nothing like that. And it happened out of nowhere. Like if people remember the initial report, it was like somebody in Houston, I think. And that was a day going into our show where there wasn't really a whole lot going on in the sports world. We're going to do what we normally do and talk college football, look at the upcoming season. But then we see like the initial report, like the second segment of the day, that OU and Texas going to the SEC. Yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, we've kind of, heard these rumblings before. An hour later, we're thinking to ourselves, oh my gosh, this could be legit. And by the end of the show, it's, oh my God, we are going to the SEC. And we had already diagnosed everything. So I remember the initial feeling was shock. Like, oh my gosh, is this a good thing for Oklahoma football? Is this a good thing for Oklahoma athletics? And then once the shock wears off, you say, well, of course it's a great thing for Oklahoma athletics. You're going to get more money as an athletic institution. You are going to have, your recruiting's going to be better when it comes to football. But here's the most important thing, Chris, because I get asked this a lot. Like, why are you guys so excited for the SEC and all this? I'm a media member here, but I get season tickets because I like to be in the stands. I like the atmosphere. No disrespect to the press box, but it's quiet and boring. I want to be out there with the people. I'm a season ticket holder, so you tell me what you would rather have. Here was OU's home conference schedule for the past couple of years. You're playing the likes of Iowa State, West Virginia, TCU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, right? I mean, you're playing a bunch of teams that, dude, you've been playing the Big 12 for a long time. Nobody even sells out their allotment of tickets to travel to Norman, Oklahoma, a blue blood program. That's a really cool atmosphere. Like you get a less amount of allotment of tickets in the Big 12 than you do the SEC. And still like 50 Baylor fans would show up. 30 Kansas fans would show up. 40 Iowa State fans would show up. That's not what this program's all about. I mean, that's not what this fan base want. They want to mix it up with the Alabama and Tennessees of the world. So you've had crap games and crap games with crap times. Oh, you played 12 regular season games last year, Chris, and 7 of those were at 11 a.m. 7. More than half of your regular season games are 11 a.m. So you go from that home schedule with those times to you're going to play South Carolina at home, and you're going to play Tennessee at home, and you're going to play Alabama at home just this year. And then next year, you're going to play LSU at home. You're going to play Ole Miss at home. You're going to play Auburn at home. You're going to play Missouri at home. Like, this is what we've been waiting on, man. Like, for someone who purchases season tickets and wants to see the great games, dude, it's freaking awesome. Like, maybe once every 3 years previously, you have a cool home game, and that's because it's Ohio State coming in or Notre Dame coming in or Tennessee coming in, not any of these Big 12 teams. This is where this program, this is where this fan base belongs. I can't tell you. I was excited initially. The excitement level just continues to go up. And it even extends into the city of Norman, man. We've done extensive research here. We've had you've had people in Norman go to other SEC towns. Like, here's a fun stat for you. Like, here's the difference of not just the athletic program for the town of Norman. Tuscaloosa, which is actually a bit smaller than Norman in terms of population, Tuscaloosa makes 3 times the money that Oklahoma does on an average game day. Bama being an SEC program, the city of Tuscaloosa makes 3 times more money on a Saturday home game than Norman does for a Big 12 home game. It's going to change everything here, man. I don't know. I could go on with this about it for an hour, but it's where I think it's a natural fit. I don't think it's forced at all. This fan base bleeds it, man. I mean, you told me that you'll put up a lot of Oklahoma stuff and it'll get crazy interaction on the SEC Unfiltered page. I mean, these people love football here. It's a natural fit for sure.
Yeah, Tyler, it's been awesome interacting with the Oklahoma fans, and like you mentioned, as passionate as any. You were talking about the schedule, some of the new opponents. Who do you feel like Oklahoma fans, maybe yourself included, and also the fan base, the pulse of the fan base that you have there, who are they most looking forward to squaring off against? I know there's obviously been some SEC matchups in years past, but is there whether it's on the schedule this year or down the road, who's the opponent you feel like Oklahoma fans, that maybe it's a new opponent or one you haven't played in a long time, that Oklahoma fans are really excited to face off against again?
I think there's 2 obvious ones here. And, I mean, everyone's excited for the home schedules that we do know of for the next 2 years. If Nick Saban was still at Alabama, I feel like that would be the overwhelming answer this year. Not that people still aren't excited for the Alabama game, but there's still so much unknown there. Like, we'll see. The Tennessee game this year, for many reasons, I think is probably the most anticipated home game this year. It's your first ever SEC game. Josh Heupel comes back to town. Josh Heupel's the last quarterback to win a national championship here. Josh Heupel used to be a coach, and he got fired. And I think that there's still some very hard feelings on the Josh Heupel side of things about how that went down. OU fans are going to welcome him with open arms, man. There's no hard feelings about how that OC stint went. We have talked about that game a lot this offseason. OU fans cannot wait to get Josh Heupel back in Norman. Maybe they bring back that 2000 championship team, standing ovation. It's your first SEC game. It's against a program that you respect, got a little bit of a history with. That Tennessee game is going to be a big, big deal, man. And it's going to be at a cool kickoff time, right? They're going to be playing at 11 a.m. The second, and this goes back about 20 years, it's LSU next year at home. OU fans have had a complicated past with LSU because of what happened in New Orleans in that 2003 season. Well, I guess it was technically January 3rd, 2004 national championship. Now, I was there, and I can say that this fan base had never seen another fan base like that before. I mean, it was, Chris, people still talk about it today, how OU fans were treated by LSU fans 20 years ago in New Orleans in that national championship game. So there's been a real sense of, we want to get those guys back. We're not going to be rude or nasty to them. OU actually takes a lot of pride in being thought of as one of the nicer fan bases out there, one of the more welcoming fan bases out there. So they'll even be nice to LSU fans when they come in. But there is kind of this, oh my God, what are LSU fans going to do to our town once they get here? We've heard about them drinking all the bars dry in Nashville for an 11 a.m. game against Vanderbilt. What's it going to be like when an LSU program comes in? So I think that there's a lot, but those are 2 that stand out to me. The Tennessee game this year is going to be massive, and a fan base like LSU coming to Norman in 2025 is going to be it's going to be pretty fascinating.
So, Tyler, with the LSU game in mind and LSU fans, is it safe to say that's the road trip that Oklahoma fans are most excited to make?
There's 2. Yeah, there's 2, and LSU's right there. I think I hear most fans are going to LSU and Ole Miss this year. Like, got to see the Grove, right? We know all the cool traditions in college football. We just haven't been able to be a part of very many, being in the Big 12, you know? So to get to see that, get to see the Grove in person is going to be really awesome. But there's been a lot of talk of, well, I'm going to go to Baton Rouge. I hope I come back alive for this thing. I hope that happens. So there's been kind of that joke that goes along with it. But LSU and Ole Miss is where you're going to see a ton of OU fans this year. And you'll see a lot of OU fans at Auburn, their first SEC game. You'll see a lot of fans at Missouri this year. But I hear most people going to that Ole Miss Baton Rouge game. In fact, when the SEC, this is a few months ago now, announced the dates for each game, all the hotels and Airbnbs and everything else in Oxford sold out that night. Once OU fans found out when you're going to Oxford, you can't find a hotel room in Oxford now. I'm going to have to stay in Memphis, I guess, and drive down for that one. A little too late on it.
Tyler, switching gears, we know about the rich history and tradition of the football program, obviously, but basketball and baseball, the other two of the big three. What's the SEC getting in those two sports? And again, we'll talk about the other sports in a second because I know you're itching to get to softball, obviously, and what they're going to do. But of the other two of the big three that folks focus on, men's basketball, baseball, what's the SEC getting in those programs?
Well, the fan base is as down on the men's basketball team as I can remember at any point in my entire life. You got Porter Moser from Loyola Chicago, and he had taken the Ramblers to the Final Four. Sister Jean, I think everyone remembers that story, but he hasn't made the NCAA tournament since he's gotten here. And they lost a lot of players from the team that came up short to make the NCAA tournament a year ago. There's not a whole lot of excitement there, man. They've got an outdated arena. They're trying to build a new one with an entertainment district around. City of Norman's not really playing ball with them. It's just not a good feel for basketball. And I think the feel initially was, well, the Big 12's probably the best, basketball conference that's out there. Maybe the SEC allows you for more wins. I mean, maybe. I mean, Alabama's still really good. Auburn's still really good. Tennessee's still really – I mean, there's some good basketball teams and good basketball programs in the SEC. So I think the feeling around here is, oh, cool, Kentucky comes to town. That's going to be awesome. But I don't think that there's a whole lot of people that feel like this is going to be an NCAA tournament team next year. On the baseball side of things, yeah, they just hosted a regional. They made it all the way to the championship series a couple of years ago. They've got a coach in Skip Johnson that, hey, if Jim Schlossnagle didn't work out at UT, Skip Johnson may get a call there. Maybe Skip Johnson's on the short list for Texas A&M. Like, you feel like you've got a really good staff in place. You've got some young players that you're excited about. I think that there's a lot of excitement of, oh, cool, LSU's going to come to town for a 3-game set. It's going to be pretty wild. Like, and here's what I say about SEC baseball, and you're more of an SEC baseball guy than I am, so feel free to disagree. But everyone talks about the depth of the SEC football, and there's no denying that. There's more depth in this conference than any other conference. But I feel like there's more depth with SEC baseball than any other sport in the conference, man. And how many sports or how many programs take it as seriously as they do. OU needs to take baseball a little bit serious. I mean, they've had some good results here the past few years, but they've got to invest in facilities. They've got to invest in NIL because they've had a good run in the Big 12 here recently. It's a different beast in the SEC, man. It's a different beast. And they just haven't had great attendance over the years. Softball really gets kind of the majority of that attendance. You don't want to be playing a home series against Arkansas, and the hog call is louder than Boomer. I mean, those are real possibilities, things that could happen. So I think people are excited about the overall direction of the baseball program, but there needs to be more fan participation, I would say, in that sport if you're going to be one of the tops in the league year in and year out.
Yeah, Tyler, to your point, on kind of a funny side note, the slogan, it just means more. Sometimes I like to joke and say it might just mean too much because you look at $100 million renovation at Tennessee for the baseball stadium, Jim Schlossnagle getting $3.5 or $3 million per year at Texas. So it's like the money's being thrown around for sure, to your point. Now, outside of those big three, again, softball, women's basketball, track and field, swimming and diving, etc., what's the SEC getting in those? And what is the SEC getting in regards to Oklahoma competing for SEC championships? Because, again, I know exactly where you're going to go with the softball thing, Oklahoma, the golden standard there, but all the other sports as well. How do you feel Oklahoma is going to factor in those in regards to competing at the highest level?
Yeah, women's gymnastics, they're the best program in the country right now. And SEC is really good at that, right? Florida's got a great program. LSU's got a great program. There's some others there. But OU women's gymnastics, I think that they're probably the best thing going right now. Track and field is not a big thing here. I know Arkansas is a really good program. Some others are there, so I don't really know where they're starting with that. SEC doesn't even have men's gymnastics, right? So I think men's gymnastics is still staying in the Big 12. Well, OU has wrestling, and does it really, anyone in the SEC really have?
Not
wrestling?
that I'm familiar.
Yeah. So in terms of winning SEC championships, softball, obviously, women's gymnastics. I think football over time is going to get there, and then we'll see about baseball. I think that those are kind of the main sports you're talking about, and women's basketball as well. Like South Carolina is just a freaking machine right now. Good luck dealing with that. You got Corella DeVille down there at LSU. I'm sure she's going to have another good roster this year, but they got it going on the women's hoop side as well.
So, Tyler, there's been a lot of chatter this offseason leading into, obviously, this date, July 1st, and then also, of course, the regular season or the football season, if you will, about best rivalries in the SEC and where does Texas and Oklahoma automatically fit in. Explain to people if you can, because I'm sure there's many SEC folks, including myself, Tyler, that have never really experienced this. It's one of those games that I would sort of catch if I could, but realistically, there were just other games on to talk about, to cover, creating content around, etc. For those that haven't experienced it, especially in person, can you describe what the SEC is getting in the Texas-Oklahoma rivalry? Or should I say the Oklahoma-Texas rivalry?
Yeah, there you go. OU Texas. Yeah, that's the correct way to say it. I can try to, and I don't want to be that guy that's like, you guys just don't understand. I mean, but really, I mean, you can't fully describe it until you're there. Like, the best way I can describe it is, imagine walking into a state fair where there's 200,000 fans. When you combine OU and Texas fans, like, there's people there that go to the fair. I think locals know that day, probably not the best day to take your kids, go to the Texas State Fair, but it's OU and Texas fans everywhere in a state fair, all drinking beer, all eating fried food. And there's a stadium right in the middle of that thing that holds over 90,000 people. And once you walk into that thing, there is a clear divide at the 50, which is probably what that game is best known for. Burnt orange on one side, crimson on the other. State of Oklahoma on one side, state of Texas on the other. OU and Texas hate each other. Oklahoma and Texas hate each other as well. They don't like each other as states. It's incredible. It's amazing. Like, you know what Texas fight song is. And when they yell certain things at their fight song, the OU side yells sucks back. Or if OU does something, Texas kind of knows what goes on here. It's amazing. The momentum swings in that game are unlike any other game that I've been to before. And look, going to a game in Norman is cool, and it has been cool. I think it's about to be a whole lot better with better games and better kickoff times. But the OU fan for a while now in the Big 12 that has traveled down to Dallas is not the same OU fan that you see for a regular home game in Norman against West Virginia, because that game is it. And you're going to the SEC. You're playing bigger and better programs. But the biggest game of the year, that doesn't change this year, and that's not going to change moving forward. It's the game that means most to your fans. It's the game that means the most to your alumni. It's the game that means the most to your recruiting. Like, that game is still the number one game on your schedule, and that's never going to change. I mean, it's just, I know Florida and Georgia have the thing in Jacksonville, and that's great. You don't have a freaking state fair right in the middle of that with everything that goes on with that. You don't have the split right at the 50. I mean, it really is perfect. And Josh Pate, who gets to go everywhere basically every single Saturday, he swears up and down it's the best that he's ever seen before. And I'm right there with him. There's a lot of really cool rivalries in college football, but no one has the unique setup. And that's why I think it's the best. It's just the unique setup that exists. It may not be the best rivalry in college football, in my opinion, if you're going home and home in Austin and Norman every single year. Maybe it's not. I mean, it's still one of the best, but the fact that you have that unique setting in a central location like Dallas, Norman is just a little bit closer to Dallas than Austin is, but you're barely separating the two. There's so much Texas alumni in Dallas. There's a ton of OU alumni in Dallas. Like, Friday night before the big game is a huge thing. The restaurants say that they do better when Oklahoma wins. It's like a mini vacation for an OU fan every single year. I can sit here and try to describe it, but you gotta feel it, man. That game it's special, dude. It's really cool.
It's certainly on the SEC Unfiltered bucket list, Tyler. You never know.
Yeah.
You could see us out there this year. It's going to happen at some point. I don't know if it's this year or next or whenever, but it's going to happen. So you mentioned Oklahoma fans, Tyler, a lot. Describe to SEC folk what the SEC is getting in Oklahoma fans. Like, how would you describe the fan base, right? It's been kind of funny. I'll fill you in over the last couple of weeks. I've heard folks talk about Texas fans as kind of wine and cheese maybe over the last couple of years, which was surprising to me. I just didn't know. I thought that was really interesting, but I haven't heard a lot about Oklahoma fans. So how would you describe the fan base as a whole, if you will?
Would you agree? And I know that this isn't necessarily in your region, but that there's a lot of college football fans that have the impression that, oh my gosh, Nebraska has the nicest fan base out there. Like,
I heard, Tyler, I heard the phrase Nebraska nice a ton when I was in Omaha. A ton.
And it's true. Nebraska has great fans. We were just up in Lincoln a couple of years ago. Oklahoma kind of resembles that, man. Like, Chris, they have always taken pride in being the fan base that's not nasty, but welcoming. Want to show you a good time. And I think it was either Tennessee in 2015, maybe as Ohio State or Tennessee in 2014, maybe as Ohio State in 2016. But someone, like some local newspaper after, like, wrote an article about, oh my gosh, how nice and welcoming Oklahoma fans were. And people take pride in that. Like, they want to show everyone a good time. They don't want to be known as the nasty fan base. They want to be known as, oh my gosh, we go to Oklahoma, have a really good time. Alabama came here in 2002, went out to Tuscaloosa in 2003, and those fan bases really meshed. And there's still a lot of people today that have been friends with Alabama fans for 21, 22 years because of how nice OU fans were to Alabama, everything. Like, all that to say, they're a very welcoming fan base. Now, on social media, can they get a little wild, a little hype? Yeah, absolutely. So mix in the welcoming with the true passion that's there. And, man, like, this fan base wants to put its best foot forward. It's not a great tailgating scene right now, and it hasn't been for a while. I think that they're making improvements to that. I think they're making big strides to make tailgating a better place, but no one wants LSU fans and Alabama fans and Tennessee and South Carolina fans to come here and say, I mean, Oklahoma was cool, but their tailgating was crap. So there's a real sense of, not bowing down to the league or anything like that, but man, let's put our best foot forward. Let's show that this is one of the better college football environments, and a lot of cool things has happened here. You're not going to get a treat poorly this year. Whether you're a South Carolina fan, Tennessee, or Alabama fans, it's going to be a very welcoming feel when you come to Norman this year.
Tyler, the dynamics of the two schools entering the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma, it's very different, which makes it very interesting in regards to, and this is a lot of it's football, obviously, but the energy around, we've heard all the chatter about Texas, the hype, if you will. Oklahoma not getting as much. So I know I just talked about the fan base, but Oklahoma as a whole, do you feel like, this day is here, July 1st, and I think the excitement levels for each because of what each maybe potentially is going to put on the field. I know you know where I'm going with this. Is there a feeling of disrespect and a chip on the shoulder and wanting to, maybe not just in football, but all the sports, just prove that, hey, you guys should be just as excited, if not more excited, for OU to join this conference as you are for the other guys?
100%. I mean, I think the people around here feel like that OU's just the little buddy that gets to tag along with Texas. When in reality, OU's been a much better program than Texas over the course of history. They got more national championships, way more conference championships, especially in the Big 12, more Heisman winner. I mean, OU's been a better program historically than Texas, and OU's dominated this rivalry since 2000, man. I mean, OU's really, really dominated since Texas in 2000. And there's a lot of hype this year for Texas. We get it. They made the playoff a year ago. But I think that the chip on the shoulder thing is accurate, and roll your eyes about Texas just because we've been hearing it for so damn long around here. Like, guys, we hear this every freaking year. It's Texas. They're going to end up disappointing. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a real chip on the shoulder, and we've asked a lot of players that this offseason. It's like, yeah, like they've kind of let it known that they know what's being said about them compared to Texas, and they want to go prove everyone wrong in year one. I think OU is definitely capable of doing that. Chris, I just got back from Destin, Florida. I was there for an entire week, and strategically, I wore a red OU hat just to kind of see what reaction I would get. I was there for 30 minutes when I ran into an older couple that had Kentucky hats on, and got to talking to him a little bit. They brought up the Brent Venables extension, and his comment to me was, have fun being 5-5, which, first off, typical Kentucky fan, they don't know that there's 12 regular season games, not 10 regular season games. Go back to basketball. But that's kind of the thing is, you just think that Oklahoma's going to sink to 5-5? A&M didn't do a damn thing in the Big 12 other than win the 1998 Big 12 conference. And immediately they rolled in and were winning a whole lot of games. Missouri were, pretty short on arrival into the SEC. I know the East wasn't good at that time, but Missouri's playing an SEC championship. So there's just this feeling that Oklahoma should just be grateful and maybe consider playing football next year, but maybe not. We'll see how that works depending on how good they are. There is definitely an attitude of a feeling of, no, OU's got the best defense that they're going to have over a decade. Like, let's go prove everyone wrong. So OU is happy to be here. Definitely happy to be here. Excited. There's a chip on the shoulder of this team, and I'll be interested to see how much do we hear about that at SEC Media Day here in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Tyler McComas of the Ref, host of The Rush from 2 to 6, and again, proud member now of the SEC media member. Add it to the resume. Tyler, always a pleasure. Hey, let folks know they're going to need somewhere to follow the Oklahoma Sooners, have a voice of the Sooners, to let them know what's going on. Let folks know where they can check out all of your work.
Yeah, I got a YouTube page. It's really going. Tyler McComas, last name spelled MCCOMAS, but also on the Ref from 2 to 6 every day. Talk about the passion. From 2 to 3, we talk OU football recruiting and just kind of football recruiting in general. And it's really popular. It's really a lot of fun. We follow what's going on in the SEC in recruiting, and we're very focused on OU recruiting as well. Then from 3 to 6, it's 95% football, man, getting ready for the SEC. So we'll have a lot of cool guests coming up. I know that we're going to preview every single SEC program before the start of the season. So definitely need you on, talk about South Carolina or really any other program that's out there. So KREF in the App Store, that's a free app. You can listen to us from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But it's going to be fun, man. I can't wait to hang out down there at SEC Media Day for sure.
Looking forward to it, Tyler. Appreciate you taking the time, my man. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Yeah, anytime.